Alright, this is going to be a short video just to explain how to use these GTD wireless microphones. To start off, we're just going to do a quick unboxing to see what's in here. So what we have in the box is we have the receiver, as well as a power cord, and then these antennas, which are going to screw onto here, as well as our actual microphones. And in the other box, there are the microphone, the body pack ones that go on your side. So there's not really many things in here, and the next part will be to show you how to set everything up and explain what all the inputs and outputs are and what all the buttons do. Alright, so I've got the power cord plugged in, and I took the antennas and screwed them in. They're screwed on the side here, and you kind of want to stick them out to the side like this. To turn it on, you hold down the power button, and it turns on. So each one of these receivers has two channels, so it can control two microphones. There's channel A and channel B, and each one of those channels has a volume knob here. And what I've been doing is I turned it up to about 3/4, and that seems to work fairly well. And I'll come back to these buttons on the front here. But if you go around to the back first, on the back we have the outputs for channel A and channel B. You have two different options. You have the balanced XLR cables like this, or you have a 1/4 inch out. The only thing with the 1/4 inch is that it's going to combine channels A and B into one signal and send it out. So the only disadvantage there is that you would not be able to control channels A and B independently from your amp or your mixer or whatever. I usually use the balanced ones with the XLR cable. So let's take that output and plug it into your input over here. Okay. The other adjustment that is on the back here, it's this knob that's labeled SQUEL and then channel. In the manual, it says that this has something to do with the distance that the microphone is away from the receiver. But honestly, it doesn't really do a good job of explaining much, so I've just kind of messed around with it. If you turn it up all the way, it seems to be fine. So that's just what I've been doing, so I'll leave it there. Alright, so I got the other receiver out, so now we have a total of 4 channels of microphones that we can work with. And I plugged each one of the outputs from the back into one of the inputs on the amplifier over here. So now I'm going to go through what all these buttons on the front do. So there are some microphone systems on the market that have a fixed frequency that they transmit and receive at. However, this microphone system, there are many different frequencies that you can choose from. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are transmitting and receiving on a frequency that does not have any interference, that's not interfering with something else or interfering with another microphone. And each one of these channels, on each one of these channels, you have a total of 100 different frequencies to choose from. So you will see on here there's a number for the group and a number for the channel. Okay, so each group has 25 different frequencies associated with it. So for this one receiver here, there are 8 groups. There's this channel A has groups 1, 2, 3, and 4, and channel B here has groups 5, 6, 7, and 8. So if group 1 has 25 frequencies, group 2 has 25 frequencies, group 3 has 25 frequencies, and group 4 has 25 frequencies. And that obviously adds up to 100 different frequencies for each channel. And each group has a different range of frequencies associated with it. So the first thing you want to make sure is you want to make sure that each one of these channels is set to a different group. So what I usually do is 1, 3, 5, and 7, just to space them out a little bit. And how you change that, there's a menu button here, there's a select, and then there's this ACT button. So the way you change the frequency on here is with the menu button and the select. So let's say I want to set this to group 3. If you hit the menu button once, then you can hit the select button here to change the channel. If you hit the menu button again, then it moves to the group, and you can change that if you want. And then I'll show you one other feature in a second, but I'm going to set the groups to 1, 3, 5, and 7. So go over here at menu, set this group to 7. Okay, so basically what I've done is I know that all my microphones are going to be definitely playing on different frequencies because all the groups are different. So the next thing you want to do is you want to set the channel within these groups to a frequency that's free, that doesn't have any interference. And the good thing is that these receivers have a feature built in where it will actually scan through all the available frequencies within that group, and it will pick the best one. So the way you do that is you're going to hit the menu button 3 times and then choose select. So 1, 2, 3, you'll see both of them blinking, and hit select. And it's going to run through all of the channels that are available in that group, and it's going to pick the best one. So I'll just do that for the rest. So that's the first thing you want to do. You want to go through each one of these and set your channel. And another thing to note is you want to do this with the microphone off, because if the microphone is transmitting, then that's going to read as interference on that frequency. So just leave the microphone off when you're doing it. Okay, so what we've done now is we've basically set, we have 4 channels here. We've set all those to a frequency that's free. You're not going to get any interference. None of the microphones are going to be interfering with each other. So the next thing is we want to match the frequencies on here to what's on our microphone, so we can turn our microphone on. And they have a really nice feature here. So let's say I want to use this microphone on this channel A, the top one. I don't know if you can see, but right now this microphone is set to group 5 and channel 7, and I want it to be set to group 3 and channel 6. So they've built in a nice feature where you hit this ACT button, and it's going to send out a little infrared signal. And then if you take the cap off these microphones and put it there, it will automatically set this microphone to the channel you want. So I'm going to hit this ACT button. This light comes on, put that there, and you can see that it has been set to group 3 and channel 6. So I'm going to take my other microphone, do the same thing. And this microphone set to group 1, channel 11. Hit this ACT button. Sets it to the right channel. Alright, so it's the same thing with these body packs here. All you do is open up the front here, turn it on first. Turn it on, open up the front, and there is an infrared sensor here. Hit that ACT button, point it there, and then the channel has been set for you. The other thing that these body packs have is they have a gain knob, this little yellow thing right here, and I usually always set that to about 3/4, so turn it all the way and then back it off a little bit. And that seems to work well. And all of the microphones take 2 AA batteries, and the amount of battery life left is shown right there by a series of bars. So there's a couple things that you want to take note of. So first of all, you want these receivers to be about 3 feet off the ground. If they're really close to the ground, they might not work very good. You also don't want them to be really close to walls, and preferably you'd like a clear line of sight between the microphone and these receivers. I could tell a couple times during a few of the weekly meetings when people were using that metal music stand up in the front, when they had the body pack on their waist. I think that caused a little bit of interference, and there was a little bit of cutting in and out. So if you can avoid that, that would be ideal. As far as the reliability of these go, these handheld microphones have been perfect. I've never had any trouble with these. They've always worked great. The only issue I've had with these is that sometimes they will seem to go into a standby mode on their own. So I'll have it on, but if I just leave it there for too long, it seems to go into some sort of standby mode. So when the person gets up there, it just doesn't work. But if you just turn it off and turn it back on, it works perfectly again. So that's the only issue I've had. It's happened probably 2 or 3 times throughout this year, which is a little bit annoying. But so one thing you could do is you could either just leave it on the entire time, which I've been doing, and then manually turn the gain up over there on the amp, because I didn't want people to have to worry about flipping a switch or anything. But probably a more reliable way to do it to make sure it's going to work is to put it in the standby mode, and then when the person gets up to talk, you have them flip it to the on. And if you do that, it's definitely going to work. So that's the only thing to really think about with these. Alright, so in this video I'm going to go through all of the features on this amplifier / soundboard, and technically you probably don't need to know what everything on this does, but I think if you at least have a general idea of what all the buttons and knobs do, it's definitely better. It will probably be helpful at some point. So the first thing I'll talk about is on the top are all of your inputs and outputs. The first 4 inputs have you get to choose between one of these XLR inputs, these balanced inputs, or just the 1/4-inch line input. And obviously these XLRs can either be used for electric guitar or a microphone. That I always use them for microphones. But you could also use this 1/4-inch input if you wanted to. And then the next 2 sections over here have right and left 1/4-inch inputs, as well as this is a 3.5 millimeter input, which is the same size as it's going to be the same size as the headphone output on your phone or MP3 player. So that's just an aux cable input. And then you have another input for right and left RCAs, and those are all your inputs. So, and then you also have sort of three sections of outputs. You have a right and left 1/4 inch output, a right and left RCA output, and then at the far right, this is your speaker output. So this output is specifically designed to run the two Samson speakers that go with this amplifier. So really, that's the only thing that you should use those outputs for. It has a left and a right, so only use these outputs for the speakers that go with this Samson amplifier. And for what I've done at the weekly meeting, you never have to use any of the outputs, so don't worry about that. You basically only need to use these inputs and these speaker outputs. So essentially, the way it works is you have all these inputs that you put in here, and it's going to take all those inputs, combine them into one signal, and then send them out through this speaker output. So generally what I'll have at the weekly meeting is I'll have these 4 microphone inputs, as well as I usually play my the music over Bluetooth for my phone. So the other thing to note is that the input for the Bluetooth is actually this one right here, this channel 9/10. So if you're using Bluetooth, you don't want to have another input on this. You don't want to use these RCA inputs because it'll essentially be 2 inputs trying to go in, and you don't really want to do that. And then I'll usually either use this 3.5 millimeter input, or I have this 1/4 inch to 3.5 millimeter adapter. I'll usually use that for the volume on my computer. So those are the inputs I'll usually use. And so for each one of these inputs, there's kind of a line that goes down here, and these are, below this are all the controls for each individual input. So the first thing I'll talk about is this master level or master gain setting down here. And well, first, essentially what happens is all your inputs come in, and then they get processed based on what settings you put here, and then all the inputs get combined and then go out through the speakers. So what this master level does is it will change the gain / volume for all of the inputs. So if you turn up the master gain, then the volume on all of your inputs is going to go up. If you turn down the master gain, then the volume on all of your inputs is going to go down. So this controls everything here. As well as the master gain, you also have individual gains for each input. So the way this works, say I turn my master gain up to 3/4, but if I have my individual gain at 0, then essentially you're not going to hear what's being inputted there at all. So the actual gain / volume that gets outputted through the speakers is a combination of your master gain and your individual gain here. So say I want my channel 2 input to be louder than my channel 1 input, I would just turn this level up higher. And a general rule of thumb is that you don't want these individual gains, these individual levels, to be greater than the master. So what I usually do is I usually turn the master gain up to around 3/4 volume or so, about there. And then from there, I'll just mess with these individual gains. So the next thing to do would be I'll just start with input 1 and then go down the line here. So the first button we have here is a button you can either be pushed in or pushed out. And the two options are mic or line. And essentially what this does is, again, this is another gain setting. So the reason you need this is because the signal that a microphone will input here is going to be vastly less than the signal, say, an electric guitar or an MP3 player would give you. So obviously you have the choice of using this input for a microphone, electric guitar, an MP3 player, or whatever you want to plug into here. But the thing is that those devices may have levels that are drastically different. So say I'm using a microphone. A microphone is going to send a very, very small input signal in here. So in order for you to hear that, ultimately out through the speakers, you're going to need to boost that signal a lot. You're going to amplify it quite a bit. But the thing is, if you have an electric guitar or an MP3 player, that signal is going to be much, much higher. So in order for you to get a good volume out of the speakers, you're not going to have to give that as much amplification as you would a microphone. So essentially, it's just essentially another thing to help you match your gains and whatnot. So if I'm using a microphone, I want this to be set on mic, so pushed out. If I'm using an MP3 player or guitar or whatever, I want it to be set to line. So if I were to use a mic and set this to line, essentially what would happen is you would just never hear the mic. The gain would be too low, and you would never be able to get any meaningful output out of it. You just wouldn't hear it. And on the converse, if you were to use an MP3 player or guitar when it's set to mic, just a tiny bit of turning this knob is going to make the volume super high, and it's not going to be what you want. So if you use a microphone, moral of the story, if you're using a microphone, have the button unclicked and set to mic. The next button you'd have down here is it says limit and comp. Honestly, I don't know exactly everything that goes into explaining that, but it's honestly not going to make much difference what you put it on. I just usually put it on comp, so I'd leave it there. The next two dials down here there's a dial for high and a dial for low. And what this is it's essentially an equalizer. So what an equalizer does is it will either increase or decrease the volume of a certain frequency range. So and you can have an equalizer with a lot of different adjustments. This one's a really simple equalizer. It only has two adjustments. There's an adjustment for high frequencies and an adjustment for low frequencies. So for an example of how you would use this is, say you have a person that's speaking with a microphone, and there's just something off about their voice. Say their voice sounds too low. There's too much low frequency content in their voice, so it sounds unnatural. So what you could do is you could either turn the high frequency up to give you more highs, or probably the better thing to do would just be to turn down the low knob. And the same thing, if someone's speaking in the microphone and their voice just sounds abnormally high pitched and it just doesn't sound natural, you could turn the high frequencies down to make it sound more natural again. So that's the general idea behind an equalizer. Then finally at the bottom here you have an effects button, and this amplifier has the ability to produce different effects in the output, and that is going to be controlled over here. I think looks like there's 16 different settings, and it's just gonna change the way that it sounds. Honestly, I never use these because I don't really see a need for them, and every one I've tried doesn't seem to make it sound the way I like or sound any better. So I don't ever turn the effects on. And this red knob that says send, this will essentially control how much effect there is from these effects, how much it will show up in the music essentially. But I just leave that at 0 and turn the effects off. I never use any of those, so you don't really have to worry about that. The last real thing on here is this button here. It's when it's pressed in, it says music. When it's pressed out, it says speech. And again, essentially, this is just another equalizer. Essentially, what they do is when you have it on the speech mode, it adjusts the frequency output to a setting where Samson believes sounds good for when you're using microphones. And then when you're doing music, it will adjust the frequency output to a setting that Samson believes sounds good for music in general. And as far as I can tell, when it's in speech mode, it cuts out the lower frequencies a lot more. So when you're playing music, you don't want it in speech mode because there's going to be absolutely no bass at all. It's not gonna sound good. So one thing you could do is you could just flip back and forth between speech and music mode when you're playing music and when you're using microphones. But I found the easiest way to do it is just to leave it in music mode, and I end up just turning down the lows on the individual microphones because I don't want to have to keep switching back and forth every time I want to either play music or use the microphones. So what I end up doing is just leaving it in music mode. And in music mode, you can tell that there's an abnormal amount of bass when people are speaking. That their voice sounds unnatural, it sounds too low. So you just go over and just turn the lows down, essentially. So that should be about well, the other thing here is there's this phantom button. Don't have that pressed in, just leave that unpressed. The other thing to note is there's these lights over here, and essentially this is going to tell you how much output you're getting, and essentially you don't want it to reach this red light here. So I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that when it hits the red light, it's sensing clipping. And I can maybe do a little bit about what clipping is later. But essentially, clipping is bad. It's not good for the speakers. And it means you're playing it too loud. Now, some clipping is not bad. Like if this light only comes on every once in a while, that's fine. But if this red light is coming on a lot, or if it's constant, then you're playing it too loud, and you have the potential to damage the speakers, and you need to turn that down. Usually this light's going to come on when it hits a heavy bass note, like a hard punch with the bass note. So that's usually when it's going to come on. If it comes on every once in a while, that's fine, but if it's coming on a lot, then you need to turn it down. So okay, well, just in general, when I have it at the weekly meeting, the way I set it up is I turn the master gain to around 3/4 volume, and then I usually turn these levels. Well, if you count the first mark as being 0, then I usually have them at about the 4th mark here, and that's usually about right. So that's just a good place to start. But that's a general overview of how this works. Just you need to understand what your inputs are and what your outputs are. You need to know which microphones are on which channel. That's kind of an easy thing to forget the first time. So just make sure that you know, okay, well, the handheld microphones are channels 1 and 2. The body pack microphone is on channel 4, or whatever you choose to put it on. And all you do to adjust those levels is you just adjust the individual levels here. And yeah, it's pretty much a general overview of this. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to show you here is not at all necessary for you to know how to use this amp, but I think it'll be interesting for you. So what I have on the screen right now, I have my iPhone, and there's an app that allows you to have a real-time analyzer. So what's on the screen is there's a graph here, and on the vertical axis, the height of the bars is showing the loudness of sound in decibels, and then on the horizontal axis where you see the numbers, let's see, like 32, 63, right there, that is the frequency in hertz. And basically what this is telling you is it's telling you the loudness of the sound that is hearing throughout this entire frequency range. And right now I have a microphone plugged into my iPhone using this app. And in general, the range of human hearing essentially is about from 20 hertz to around 20,000 hertz, and that would be ideal, like a newborn baby with very good hearing. As time goes on and we age, the range of frequencies that we can hear definitely decreases. We lose the high end as well as the low end a little bit. But what's shown on the chart here are the frequencies that humans can hear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play what is called pink noise through one of the speakers, and then I'm going to change the equalizer on the amp. There's the low and the high equalizer, and then you will see that the output is going to change on the screen. Pink noise is essentially a track that will, it sounds like static. That's what it sounds like, but essentially what it's doing is it's playing sounds at, in theory, every single frequency at the same level. So once I turn on this track, the graph is going to start to level out. So once I turn this track on, you're not going to be able to hear me. So I'm gonna tell you what I'm going to do in advance. First, I'm going to turn the high knob, the high equalizer knob, all the way up, and then all the way down. So you're going to see this side of the graph go up and then down, because these are the high frequencies. And then I'm going to turn the low equalizer knob all the way up and all the way down. So you're going to see this go up and then this go down. So I'm going to turn the track on and then show you that. So I don't know if hopefully you found that somewhat interesting, but it's kind of just to show you what those knobs do, the high and the low equalizer knob, and to show you that it actually does change the frequency response of the speakers.